Hello, hello. So, as promised, we are back here in the basement talking about books. And today we have something that's a bit of a departure from what I normally discuss. This is Japanese Garden Design by Marc P. Keane. Now, normally I'm talking about books on sustainability and permaculture and organic gardening and all that stuff. I don't normally touch on design, and that's partly because I don't normally read about it. I I'm often left to my own devices on that kind of thing. I don't try and copy a design. I just kind of go with the flow. Maybe specific plants I might really want because somebody else had them, or the overall concept of I guess the thing I would reference is my mom's godmother's garden had what I like to call rooms, where there were just lots of shrubs and things that created rooms in her garden, and every one of these sections was different from the other, and I loved that, and it's something I kind of want to achieve in our garden. But I don't I don't know much about garden design, so a lot of this has been just whatever sounds good to me. And when we decided that we wanted to do the front yard, um, at least the large section of our front yard as a Japanese garden, I didn't want to screw it up. I don't want to make something that looks like a Western person's like imagined view of a Japanese garden. Obviously, I'm not going to make a perfect, beautiful, traditional Japanese tea garden as much as I would want that. At least to start out, we're not going to get there. But I wanted to learn a bit about what I could be hoping to move towards. And this book was invaluable for that. So it was billed in the reviews as less about how to do the design and more about why. And I feel like when you teach people why, they can better figure out the how. So when I was reading that, I got really excited. Um, and, it did not disappoint. There is a ton about the effects of politics and social change on gardens. This isn't like a dense history of Japan. There are just things about the history of Japan in here and how they changed gardening in Japan, whether it meant that people had bigger properties or smaller properties, or were trying to achieve a particular social ideal, so they went with this type of design. It covers the reasons people made the different gardens during different periods in Japan, which is really, really cool. And reading this book, like, it's something I've understood in the past, but when you apply history to your passions, it can put things in perspective. The United States is just an absurdly young country. And Japan is just so old in comparison. There are entire periods of social revolution in Japan that are longer than the entire history of the United States. And those different periods in Japan often had their own sort of style of gardening. And, there's just so much to look for inspiration from in that history. And this book really provides a great roadmap to at least figuring out, oh, I definitely want that. And then that's what I did. Found out what I've been picturing in my mind as a Japanese garden, and what I'm going for in our front yard. It's sort of a traditional Japanese tea garden, from a specific period, and I'm obviously going to hack it up and bastardize the concept and make mistakes and use the wrong plants because this is Minnesota, not Japan. But I'm excited to have a sort of blueprint that I can make a really terrible copy of in our front yard. So all that being said, again, this is not a book that tells you how to design. It tells you what elements to use and why, or where to look for those sort of things, and it specifically says something along the lines of there's a quotation from a very early Japanese book on gardening, and it said something along the lines of, "Don't try to copy the masters, try to achieve what they were trying to achieve." And there's a bit in the book about, you don't have to use Japanese plants to make a garden that has the features of a Japanese garden. You're looking for a, if they had your plants back then, they'd have used your plants back then, kind of thing. As long as the machine is moving, who cares what parts you used, right? So I'm going to take that to heart. I'm going to use Marc P. Keane as my get out of jail free card when my Japanese garden doesn't look Japanese at all. And this won't be the only book I read on Japanese gardening. I have another one called Secret Teachings. It has a much longer title than that. Those are the first 2 words. It was recommended by one of the gardeners for the Como Zoo and Observatory in St. Paul, which they have a Japanese garden there that was designed by a renowned Japanese gardener whose name I cannot remember at the moment. And I was told that this Secret Teachings book was like the book. So I'm excited to read that when it comes. And yeah, I think I am done rambling about that. If you're interested in, if you're working on designing a garden, I would absolutely pick this book up just to kind of give you a feel for some of the things that you're allowed to do, outside of what you saw your parents and grandparents and neighbors do. There are so many options for gardening, and I feel like the more you learn about what other people have done far away from you, the better results you're going to get right here at home. And all that aside, we have a couple of updates. I'm not going to show you, but the garlic has died, unfortunately. It keeled over shortly after the attempted transplant, so I will just hopefully end up remembering to order bulbs to plant in the fall. And despite telling myself I was done buying seeds, I actually bought 3 more kinds. Speaking of Japanese plants, I ordered some white and some pink dandelions. These are not supposed to be as aggressive as yellow ones, but regardless, nobody in my neighborhood, and certainly not my immediate neighbors, nobody kills the dandelions. Nobody stops them from going to seed, and I don't either. So I figured it might be fun, if these work, to have a few different colors, and who knows, maybe see if they spread. And it's nice to see the rabbits and the bumblebees using these plants, and yeah, just a nice little novelty there. And then I ordered some nasturtiums. I was going to hold off on these for a year or so, despite the fact that I've seen numerous mentions of these in books as nice edible plants. I guess you can eat all or most of the plant, but when I was ordering the dandelions, I threw these in the cart to give a shot. They look beautiful, and hopefully we can grow them well. The last thing is to show you this. This is my growing stockpile of cardboard. So when we've made garden beds in the past, we've used newspaper as an underlayer to help smother grass and weeds as the bed gets established. We may continue to do that depending on how much cardboard I'm able to get, but since I have access to a whole bunch of it constantly at work, I figured instead of letting that go into the compactor, I would start bringing some home. It'll be hopefully easier to use than the newspaper, and in theory, it should be better at smothering. I think mostly that would be the case for, we have quackgrass, so it might make it a little harder for the quackgrass to get through, And I don't always put down, I'm a little bit bad about putting down really heavy layers of newspaper. I often just put a couple layers. So this should do a better job than what I normally do for my newspaper, and should be faster. And I think that that is everything. So I am going to let you folks get going. I appreciate you watching, and yeah, I really can't wait for spring to come. All right. Bye, guys.